feeling obnoxious. Stop it, quitting was never an option. Exhausted, this passion is never exhausted. And you cannot stop it, nah, you cannot stop it. Quitting was never an option. And you cannot stop it, nah, you cannot stop it.
And today on the Forbidden Knowledge Podcast, we have my very good friend and incredible researcher, Jason Martell. Internationally recognized, Mr. Martell's pioneering research has garnered global attention through esteemed media platforms, including the History Channel, Discovery Channel, the Sci-Fi Channel, and the BBC. Notably, he became a fixture on the History Channel's long-standing program, Ancient Aliens, and is currently on tour with Ancient Aliens Live. As an accomplished author, his newest book, Ancient Astronauts, released in 2024, is available on Amazon.com. It offers readers a profound exploration into his research. Moreover, Mr. Martell holds the distinction of being a co-founder of several successful technology enterprises, including acorns.com and godtube.com, reflecting his remarkable acumen for innovation and entrepreneurship. During his notable tenure at Facebook, spanning 2.5 years, Mr. Martell focused on pioneering pathways to the metaverse and innovative applications of AI across the family of apps. His endeavors have left an indelible mark on the intersection of technology, AI, and interconnected digital experiences. For 2 decades, Mr. Martell has seamlessly integrated his twin passions, entrepreneurship and the study of ancient civilization technologies, into the bedrock of his career. These parallel pursuits converge in their shared aspiration to uncover knowledge and propel progress for the betterment of humanity. So welcome to the show today, Jason Martell. All right, so Jason, welcome to the Forbidden Knowledge Podcast. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Billy. Thanks for having me on.
Good. It's been a minute since I actually saw you. No, I did see you recently for only a few seconds in the backstage of an Ancient Alien stage show.
That's right. Yes, Ancient Aliens Live. Yep.
Yeah. How's that been going for you guys?
Well, I'm very grateful to be, a part of the show for the last half of 2024, but going to be doing full charge going into 2025.
Wow.
With the crew. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Are you kidding? It's great.
Yeah. It was great. You guys had great chemistry on the stage, the way you bounced off of one another. And the fans really loved it. I could see the excitement and the joy in their eyes when I walked in, and everybody was really fully engaged in everything you guys had to say. So hats off to you, man. It's an amazing presentation.
Thanks, Billy. I appreciate that. Well, it was great to see you and your family there. And as you said, briefly get to, give you guys a hug backstage and say hi. So
yeah, definitely. And so today we're going to talk about some of the topics that a lot of people really want to hear from somebody else. It's not that they've never been mentioned before on this show or many other shows, but a person such as yourself that have been really researching the Anunnaki, aka the Anunna, and ancient cultures and the ancient astronaut theory for many decades. I think, they just love to hear from somebody else sometimes, because I think that it gives them some confirmation. Also, slightly different perspectives are so good. So I might have a certain perspective that might not jive with somebody. They may not be on the same frequency with me, but I love to hear other people's perspectives on everything, and especially yours. And I'll tell you, to be honest with you, what really got me to become a fan of yours, actually, believe it or not, was years and years ago. Obviously, I saw you on Ancient Aliens, and then I saw you break off and do this web series that I checked out. And I also went to a couple of your lectures at a couple of expos. And I really was fascinated. I said, man, this guy really has spent a lot of time and hours, because I knew what it would take to get to your level, a lot of time and effort doing the research and studying to gain this knowledge and to gain this understanding of the information, to be able to connect all those little intricate dots to paint a picture for people. So I appreciate that. And those are some of the things we're going to talk about today.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Yeah, man. So why do so many ancient gods across cultures seem to be related to water, like the Nomo, or other people wearing the fish suits, or the god of the ocean or the waters? What is that?
I mean, you can go down the list, obviously starting with Enki and Sumerian, but some of the top level ones like Poseidon, Neptune, but then you get into like, the Toltecs and Hindu cultures. They all have these references of what appear to be some type of a god, either associated with the water, representing some type of a suit coming out of the water, or as you mentioned, an association with literally like, I'm a fish god of some sort. So I think it's very interesting that there seems to be a cross-cultural story there. Yeah. And, maybe there's something to do with where they come from, being a watery planet. But it is an interesting segue into realizing, who are these people that are visiting us and where do they come from? We start to look for patterns of recognition. That's definitely one of them.
Yeah, definitely. And it really is incredible that you can see this pattern of recognition around the entire planet. Like you said, it's like one continent over here, another continent over here, a very similar story, and always surrounding water, which means, what scientists say could possibly be true. If they can find a planet with water, there must be life.
And what's really interesting too, Billy, is we spin it into current topics, right? A lot of these gods that are represented look as if they're wearing like an old suit that you would deep dive. You know what I mean? And you're like, well, what does this mean? We have to understand that most likely, yes, they're doing their best to represent visitations with these creatures. What if they're from our own planet? And there's that whole other subterranean existence in our oceans that we still don't know. So I wonder, recently with things going on, right, coming out of the ocean, especially living here off the coast of California, I'm like, what's freaking down there?
Yeah.
Could be ancient gods.
We would never know because we haven't even explored the oceans. So yeah, it's quite possible there could be some level of an advanced civilization. I remember reading one time that in Christopher Columbus's captain's log, this back in the 1400s, he wrote down in his log, which is a very important document to write. You don't write in your captain's log for just, because you feel like you have nothing else to do. He wrote that something came up out of the ocean and lit up the entire night sky and flew off into the heavens. So what could that have been, since they didn't have any light pollution? They didn't have electricity and everything else. It sounds like it could have been one of these USOs.
Right. And that's what you said earlier about connecting the dots is, we might see one reference of a cultural belief and you look at this and say, oh, it's mythology. They're just depicting their gods. Mm-hmm. But when you can make those nuanced connections across the globe to other cultures, other references, and even modern references, it doesn't give us the answer, but it makes the question mark larger, of more importance, to be like, why?
Yeah, absolutely. Recently we just took about 100 people on a tour of Egypt just back in October of this year, last year now. Yeah, the year's running by so fast now. And for the first time, I've seen this in Egypt. Now, I had heard about the very slender type beings, but I saw them depicted on some vases and some jars and some other pieces of artifact inside the Cairo Museum, which I had never seen them before. I had heard about them, but I had never got a chance to see them. I don't think the exhibit was up at the time I went, from 2014 and 18, whatever. And so now other cultures have talked about these slender type beings. Do you believe that there's some type of a race of slender beings, some call them ant people or whatever, that's linked to these ancient civilizations?
Billy, it's just one of those markers that I've seen across the globe where you have, in the Sumerian lexicon, there's various depictions of them being very pious, I think is the word, but you see them with their hands wrapped at the waist and they look very humble. And then, I noticed that this pose was happening across other cultures, and sometimes in the form of their gods. So when we go to like Göbekli Tepe, you see that there's these columns, and if you look closely, the beings that are depicted there, long, slender beings, hands wrapped at the waist. Yeah. Bada Valley in Indonesia, similar statues found. And the ones that really caught my attention were, the Moai heads at Rapa Nui. It's like, well, they're not just heads. Actually, when you excavate down, it's a long, slender body, hands wrapped at the waist. So I theorize that maybe, when we hear some of the more modern, like ancient apocalypse, I think I'm saying that right, because my book was called Knowledge Apocalypse. I get it confused.
Right.
Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse.
Yeah.
You see that there's an association with these, gods coming from around the world. They show up right after a great flood. And a lot of the depictions, again, seem to represent this possible race. Now, is it a lost race that departed from Atlantis and fed out to the other cultures? Possible. Or it's something else, right? But yeah, you do see, again, the marker of that type of a race, whoever they were, definitely leaving a chain of evidence.
Yeah. You see it everywhere. It's, and what's so crazy is, like you say, they seem to show up after these major events. Even just recently, I had some video footage analyzed by our editors that looked like something crawling through the smoke of the fires over LA. Just something, a glimmer of something moving that didn't. Yeah, just so weird. I had it sent to them. I want to find out from them, from their professional opinion, if this is one of those instances where they can't explain it. Because I send them a lot of stuff and they go, nope, no good, fake AI, whatever. So they can analyze it. So I'm looking forward to finding out if this is another one of those incidents where we have a catastrophe, and then these beings show up, because it seems like that happens throughout history. And I always wonder, do you think that they're guarding our skies, or do you think that someone's watching over us, or just observing, or are these the watchers? What's your opinion on that?
We're going to go down a rabbit hole with this question. I want to bring up something, and I won't forget at the end. It's called rods that fly through the air. If I forget, remind me to bring it up. Billy, I think that it's an open basket of what could it be. There's just a lot of stuff that's happening, obviously, flying around in our skies and such. So I love the theories and exploring, what we hear out there now around, giving it more of these official titles, like UFOs became UAPs. Fine. However, we can track them and still be on the same page. Great. NHI. Fine. Not aliens or extraterrestrials. You want to call them that? Same thing. So I feel like there's a baseline of conversation starting to take place that when we look at evidence like that, I tell my wife and others the same thing. It's like, if I tried to explain to you a thunder shower or a lightning storm, I'm like, man, I went outside, all this water started falling and these loud sounds and bolts of lightning. You're like, sounds dramatic.
Right.
Well, once you experience it, you're like, wow, a thunder shower. So it's the same thing with seeing paranormal phenomenon, especially things, like or what's being reported and like what we see in these videos. I just don't know until I see it firsthand. Quick segue to that, though, because, I know you'll appreciate this. I have something sitting here on my desk to just talk about that topic. So let's go ahead and show you something.
Yeah.
I look at the sky. This is the first time I've probably said this on camera, too. I look at the sky every night here where I live in Mission Viejo using these.
Nice. I love those.
Third gen, military grade night vision.
Yeah.
Nightvisionforless.com. Great site. So that, and this bad boy, a megawatt laser, which, don't really want to flash at it too many times, but every night at 6 p.m., I'm tracking these objects like you saw in that fire. They're not FAA blinking. They make no sound, and they're so high up there.
Yeah.
And they're going in different paths. I mean, several times there's like 6 in view, and I'm like, what is this? Some kind of a highway up there?
Right.
So I have no idea what those objects are, but I definitely am aware that, there are things flying around in our skies, if you're paying attention.
Yeah, there's definitely things up there. We did a UFO hunt 3 years in a row, and we went out to Giant Rock in the middle of the desert. And it's a great spot. We found this nice cliff that we can just hike up this cliff and camp out. And you're right, around a certain time, the sky just literally lights up with these moving objects. And so we take our satellite tracker with us on our apps, and we take the ISS tracker to make sure it's not the International Space Station. And of course, the flight trackers to make sure planes, right? So we're very careful to make sure we're not looking at technology that's ours. And yes, we have seen technology that is ours because we're tracking everything. But I'm telling you, we saw so many incredible things that weren't on the apps, that weren't being tracked by the ISS. There wasn't ISS. It wasn't a satellite. It wasn't Starlink. It wasn't an airliner. What were these things? And some of them would connect and stop and then go around each other. And then one would take off lightning speed. Another one would slowly move. And then it's gone again. And the people we took were like blown away because some of them had never seen a UFO before. So I know what you're talking about. That dark sky, if you have the right technology like those infrared goggles you have, you can see some of the most incredible things while everyone's just walking around, living their lives. There's a whole thing going up in the sky that's so incredible. We need to start looking up more. I agree with you 1,000% on that.
I probably look like my neighbors will walk by and I'm just, it's dark and I'm just sitting there like this with this thing in my eye. And they're like, so, yeah. I mean, when you look at the sky through your naked eye, it is beautiful. Obviously, even from the desert where there's less ground light, but when you put on night vision goggles, it's a different experience. You're like, wow, all that is there. And when you pay attention, there's other things there.
Yeah. There's we were at Egypt. We were in Egypt, I think it was 2 years ago. And we had about 75, 80 people with us on a tour. We were standing inside the Sphinx enclosure on a sunrise tour, VIP sunrise tour. Nice. And while we're there, it was phenomenal. And we were showing them the enclosure wall and how it's, you can see the weather pattern, the weathering from erosion of water moving across from west to the east. And while we're doing that, one of the people who had their cameras out recording us says, "What is that?" And we record this object flying around above us, and it moves, and it just takes off and disappears. Nice. And we've got it on video. Yeah, a good video too, which I'll add to this video.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. The only, like my wife's like, well, you should start recording these. And I say to her, well, why? So I can add to the dots, the collection of dots flying in the sky. There's nothing I can do, right? It's one of those things where it's like, if you put these on and look at the sky and you walk away going, watching a video of it's not the same, right?
No, it's not. It's never the same as seeing it in person. It's like saying you saw the pyramids on a documentary or on Google instead of being directly at the base of the pyramid itself. It's two totally different things.
Right. This sounds like the basis of a movie called Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, right, exactly. I know, right? And speaking about these flying things in the sky that we can't identify, talk to us a little bit about Pakal, Lord Pakal and his sarcophagus lid.
There's a lot of these artifacts that we have of a representation of flight across various cultures. And, Pakal's tomb, I think, is a really interesting one to highlight. One, because his tomb is built literally underneath a pyramid. This slab is so large, there's no way that they could have built the pyramid and then brought it underneath there. So his tomb was literally constructed and a pyramid was placed on top of it. And the sarcophagus lid, very clearly depicts, you can just Google Pakal with a P and then a K, Pakal. Yeah. And you see what looks like him, seated upright, and he's holding levers and gears. He's got a nose apparatus. He's seated in the vertical position, just like our astronauts when they're in a rocket ship. And, you literally see depictions of what look like flames coming out the bottom. So that depiction of Pakal is very interesting, again, when we look across cultures. And you see that the Sumerians had even a word for something called the Shem that would detach and come down to the surface. And it looks like a landing capsule, like we use the same thing, the parachute opens and it comes. I mean, it literally looks like the same thing. So you see a lot of these different things. I found a tomb of a governor called Hoi, an Egyptian governor, and on the cover of his tomb is an inscription that shows what appear to be like animals and plant level, giraffes and such. But then there's a ground level, and it clearly looks like a rocket going, like it's sitting underground, and you can see people that are inside the rocket. And so I think a lot of these depictions, again, are just showing us that, the ancients were aware of and were probably utilizing through the gods in some form the power of flight. When you go to sites like Baalbek in Lebanon, and you hear about the ancient tales of Baal and even the visiting people like King Gilgamesh and some of these greats that have come there, and they're like, you know what, I saw the gods going off and coming up in these loud sounds of smoke and fire.
Watch this video for free at www.4bk.tv or download the app on your smartphone, Fire Stick app, Samsung TV, Roku, and other app providers.